Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. More people will probably join as time goes on, but we're just gonna go ahead and start, and then they can pop in and out. And I just wanted to ask before, like the end, is it okay if I record the meeting and then post it later?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally fine. Whatever you want to do
Okay. Okay,
works for
awesome.
me. Yeah.
Awesome. I just wanted to check with you first.
Yeah, no, thank you. Not a problem.
Awesome. Okay, y'all. So we do have the spring semester shirts and masks. I think almost everyone has picked them up. There's probably like a handful that don't have their shirts yet, but everyone else is just your mask. We will have a couple of pickup dates that I'll post in an email later. I'm still working to sell our old shirts. I haven't gotten approval for the 20th, so I've got a feeling that that's probably not going to happen. But what I'll do is I'll bring them with me on the shirt pickup dates, and then I'll have them out so that way you guys can buy them there as well. And then, so it's close to the end of the semester. We have 2 meetings after this, and that's it. So some volunteer and hour opportunities. So we have the meetings, you can still earn hours there. Blood drives, we have 1 blood drive left. If there is another organization that you're in that has a blood drive, we'll take hours for that too. You just have to let us know the date and the time and what you donated to get credit for it. And then Sam Houston Food Pantry donations, 3DB Huff donations, and then donations to the Alzheimer's Association, American Heart Association, and as well as Safe House. Safe House has a max limit of 2 trash bags of clothes for 10 hours per bag. So that would be a max of 20 hours. And then there's only one vaccination drive, and that's going to be tomorrow. Whenever I looked, it was full. So if you didn't sign up for it, then unfortunately, you're probably not going to be able to do it. I don't think anyone is going to drop it. So there's that. The 19th is our last blood drive. So you get 2 hours for successfully donating red blood cells, an additional 2 for donating plasma or double red blood cells. And then 1 hour if you attempt to donate, but then you get rejected for whatever reason they have for you. And then also 1 hour for each hour that you pass out flyers. You can pass out flyers at any day at any point in time. Just make sure you get in touch with me so that way I can give you the flyers. And then you can just pass them out at your own time. Time yourself. Let us know how long you stayed out there for, and then you'll be good. And then this is our coordinator's information. So if you need to ask her about whether you're eligible to donate or not, she'll be able to tell you. And then this is basically our schedule. There are a couple of virtual events that I'm going to add that Miss Renee shared with us recently this week. So we'll keep you guys posted on that. But so far, this is it. So we have we don't have the 20th blood drive anymore. It's just going to be on the 19th. And then we do have 2 more speakers after that. And the 29th is our very last meeting. And that's when we'll announce the scholarship winners as well as the next executive board for the following academic year. So just stay tuned and then you'll get updates on that. So going back to the scholarship. So the top 2 members with the most hours will receive $100 each. You have to meet the minimum requirements of being a full-time member, have your dues paid, and earn a minimum of 10 hours. There's a lot of you guys that have already really surpassed this. So definitely just keep tabs with us, keep turning in your hours, keep showing up. And then we will announce the winners on the very last meeting. And then today, I'm sorry, I didn't make a slide for it, but we do have a speaker from the Baylor College of Medicine PA program. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I'll enable it so you can share yours. And then you're good to go.
Okay, sounds good. Do you, just a couple questions real quick. Do y'all like to use the chat, or I certainly can watch it. If you want to have questions, during the presentation, or I can wait till it's over. It's however y'all want to do it is fine by me. So.
Yeah, everyone can just message your questions in the chat. So that way you have,
Okay.
you can for sure get to all of them that are there.
Okay, sounds good. And for some reason, if you have one and I miss it along the way, I'll come back and check when we're done. So let me see if I can, hold on just a second. Okay. Can y'all see that?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, perfect. Let me just open that up. For some reason, my computer wants to be a little bit on the slow side today. Hang on just a sec. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in on a Thursday. I think we're on Thursday evening. My name's Alyssa Love. I am an assistant professor at the Baylor College of Medicine PA program in Houston. I'm also a physician assistant, and I am a graduate of this program as well. So I'm super excited to talk to you all about our profession and kind of what we do. Anybody unfamiliar with a PA? There may be some. I don't know. We'll see, I guess. Whether you are or you aren't, hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about what we do in our careers. So let's see if I can get this thing rolling here. Okay, so we're a relatively young profession. I mean, of course, our inception was many years before any of y'all were ever born, back in the late 60s. And basically, PAs, the profession was created because there was a shortage of physicians at the time. And so what they did was create this model based on a military medic model that had been created years and years ago in one of the wartime situations. And now we've got PAs practicing all over the country in every field of medicine and every practice, and even starting to, scatter out internationally as well. Let's see. Okay, so what's a PA basically? So we're physician assistants. We are healthcare professionals. We are certified and state licensed to practice medicine. PAs, all PA programs at this time grant a graduate degree. So we all have a master's degree. And like I said earlier, we can practice in every setting of medicine that there is available pretty much. So we are part of the healthcare team. We work in conjunction with physicians and other members of the healthcare team. We can diagnose illnesses, manage issues, prescribe medications, order labs, all those sorts of things. We can serve as a primary healthcare provider for patients, depending on the setting. And we're a very versatile profession. We're very unique in that you can graduate from PA school, for example, and go into, let's say you decide to do general surgery, and you do that for 4 or 5 years, and then you decide you want to do something different, dermatology. So you want to work on people's skin. You have the ability to mobilize between one area of medicine and another, which is really, really neat, and makes flexibility a real attractive part, I think, of this profession. So, yeah, like I said, we're kind of everywhere now for the most part. So the duties that we have really depend on the setting in which we're working. So a lot of what we do is dictated by the practice, or whom we're working with, or sometimes the level of experience will dictate what we can do. So new graduates sort of wean into a practice, and there's time allowed for them to acclimate or get used to a practice right out of graduating from school. Depending on where you practice, state laws oftentimes will sort of dictate some of the things that we may or may not be able to do. But that's kind of, pretty much most PAs can do the same things in all states, including prescribed medicines and controlled medicines and things like that. So here's a list of all the things that we can do. And I've mentioned some of them. We do a lot of patient education. We can do procedures. We can pretty much do everything but perform a major operation. We do first assist in surgeries, as an adjunct, I guess, to surgeons. So the other thing that's unique, PAs not only work in clinical practice, but we can work in other fields of medicine. For example, there are PAs who who do research primarily. There are some who work in academic medicine, which is what I do. So I, for the most part, train PA students when they're in school. And I also still practice clinically as well. There are PAs who are sales reps. They rep medications, pharmaceuticals, all kinds of biotech equipment. They can work in administration, work in policy, everywhere, pretty much anywhere that a physician can work, we can too, outside of clinical practice. So we do focus on team practice. We do work in conjunction with physicians, and by state law, we are required to have a supervising physician in practice. So basically what that means is that wherever we are practicing, we have to have access to a physician to ask questions or collaborate about the care of a patient. We mostly practice independently, but for the sake of the patient and legally, we always have a care team or a physician to assist us when we need. Okay, and that's important because honestly, in this day and age of medicine, it takes more than one person to take care of a patient. I mean, it's really very team oriented with what we do because the medical system is pretty complex and patient care is too. So, okay. And stop me along the way if something doesn't make sense or you have a question. So I mentioned earlier that we work in every setting. So this kind of gives you an example of where you're most likely to find PAs. So in outpatient clinics, so like if you go see your doctor for a routine checkup, or maybe you're sick with a cold or that sort of thing, you may run into a PA in a clinical situation. Lots of PAs are in the hospital, so they may work seeing patients who are admitted and on the floor, or patients who are in the emergency room. We're in urgent care centers, we're on college campuses, but the majority right now are in clinical practice. So specialties, you can sort of see like an equal distribution between surgical specialties and primary care. So like family medicine or pediatrics, that's considered primary care. And then all these other subspecialties, I mean, that's, oh gosh, you name it, radiology, oncology, ophthalmology, different areas of medicine. So where you'll see PAs. So let me talk a little bit about the education side of PA programs. So there are over 250 programs in the United States. Those numbers continue to rise. There are programs that are opening their doors every year, probably every month, actually. The educational programs that we have are modeled after or physician education. So basically what that means is the education that we receive is very similar to a physician's education. It's just modified. So it's shorter, but it's pretty dense because of what we have to accomplish, in 2.5 years. So all PA programs grant a master's degree. There are 27 months is the average length of programs, but you may see anywhere from 24 to 30 months, just depending on the school. And most of the PA programs are housed in medical schools, but some are on major university campuses and teaching hospitals and things like that. PAs in their training, at Baylor, for example, our PA students are in class with medical students, orthotics and prosthetic students, nurse anesthesia students. So there's a lot of interdisciplinary learning during the education process because you're going to work as members of teams, right, when you actually get out into practice. So the curriculum or the training side of things is pretty intense. The first year of education or the first year of PA school is basically what we call didactic training. And so it's the classroom. It's kind of what y'all are doing. A lot of you are probably doing right now. So our students are in class. They take, basic medical sciences, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry. I'll give you a example of the schedule, what that looks like. There are a lot of laboratory classes. They have ethics class. They have a physical diagnosis class where they learn how to take a history and do a physical exam and approach patients, that sort of thing. And then the second part of training is the clinical phase. So that's when we send students out into the hospitals and into clinics so that they learn to evaluate patients in different settings. And so this consists of over 2,000 hours of patient care contact in rotations. So the list here, these are all the different areas of medicine where PAs are required to be trained. So basically, we are trained as generalists, and that allows us to be able to move from one area of medicine to another. So the PA program at Baylor, I'm going to focus on just a little bit, just to kind of give you a specific viewpoint of what a program might look like. So our program is 30 months in length. The first year is just over a year, so 13 months, and then the clinical phase is 17 months. And our students also have a research portion of their training. So they actually complete a master's project, and I'll talk about that in a second. So we do have semesters and we have terms within those semesters. And so students do take exams, usually at the end of the terms. We have skills testing where we evaluate students as they demonstrate their skills. So basically performing the physical exam under a certain situation. And we have readiness assessments. So we evaluate students all along their training process to make sure that they are ready to advance to the next stage. Because our goal is to make sure that you are ready for practice when you graduate. And our goal is not for students not to graduate. We want everybody to graduate, of course. And that is the case. So 13 months, like I said, of the first year. So at Baylor, we have 6 academic terms split up into 2 semesters. And I kind of talked about what some of those classes look like, and I'll show you a schedule here in a second. So this is what our didactic year looks like. So you can see here a fall semester, a spring semester, and then there are terms within the semesters. So for us, the first term is 4 weeks, and the following terms are each 8 weeks. And so if you look at, let's take term 2. If you look at the number of courses that are completed in this 8-week block of time, most of these courses are anywhere from 2 to 3 hour semester credit hours. So in the course of a year, PA students complete about 60 semester course hours. Okay, if that gives you kind of an idea of sort of the density of the program. But we have a lot of, there's lots of systems in place to help students academically. There's a lot of support and resources for students, especially as they adapt to this schedule. So basically they're in class almost 8 to 5 every day. As we move into the spring, the schedules get a little bit lighter. And so they're not necessarily in class all the time. So some classes will go for the whole year. So for example, physical diagnosis, which is where they learn to do the physical exam and the history, and they start seeing patients generally in the first part of the semester so they can develop these skills. The rest of the classes, a lot of them are classroom typical, kind of like what you probably are doing. But we have team-based learning where they learn in groups as well, which the students really, really seem to like. So once they finish the didactic year and move into the clinical year, the rotations that we have at Baylor are listed here. All of those, actually most of these were included in that list I showed you earlier. So all PA schools are required to offer certain rotations. And then we have the option of getting a little more creative or specific with what we want to offer. And so at Baylor, we offer a physical medicine and rehabilitation and a geriatrics rotation because the population of people in this country is aging. And that's pretty much what the majority or a huge portion of the population are aging. And so it's important to understand how to take care of those patients because they are more complex. In the clinical year, students continue to have classes that they take. They don't go to class necessarily all the time, but they do have other courses where they learn about therapeutics or basically how to start and stop medicines and make decisions about medications. We have a cultural competency class that students complete in both years of education. At Baylor, most of our students are completing their rotations in Houston. So we are basically situated in the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest medical center in the country. And so we are fortunate to have a lot of rotations that are established and kind of right outside of our doorstep. So most of the time students will stay in Houston, but we do send some students out into rural sites for the experience of rural medicine. Some will have sites outside of Houston as well. So, and that's pretty typical of most programs. A lot of programs will send their students out of town. Some will send them out of state. It really just depends on where their learning opportunities are. So this is kind of what the clinical year looks like. So basically rotations will last anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. So for example, obstetrics and gynecology, where you take care of women who are pregnant and women in general, that's a 4-week rotation. We have an internal medicine inpatient, which is 8 weeks. And so that's kind of how they fall. And this is the typical order. The rotations that you see that occur later are sort of more advanced rotations where students are really getting ready to graduate and are starting to function a little more independently as students. So as I mentioned earlier, all programs are master's programs. And so there's some sort of master's thesis project that all students have to complete. And it just really depends on the program. At Baylor, our students complete a master's paper. So a lot of times they'll come up with their own projects, but there's a lot of research going on at Baylor. And so we usually can connect them with someone who's already doing research, and they're able to come up with a project. And there's a lot of guidance and mentorship to help out with this. So they basically write a paper on their research, and they create a poster, and we have a poster contest for Research Day. And, you know, some students end up having publications out of these papers, which is really nice. You know, and at the end of the day, the purpose in this, aside from being a requisite to having a graduate degree, is to help you understand where research comes into play with medicine, because most everything that we do is based on research. You know, proof of what works and what doesn't work. And so practicing clinicians need to have an understanding of how to interpret research and appreciate its role in what we do. So this is just to give you a little idea of what the costs look like, okay, for postgraduate training. So this is what you see here is the cost of an entire education. It's not per year, it's for the whole thing. And these are just estimations based on, this is an average based on different programs across the country. Texas varies in its tuition rates based on whether or not it's an in-state program or an out-of-state program, okay? And we have both in Texas. And again, this living expense number here, very dependent on where you are. You know, some people may live at home or have someone to live with, and so this number looks very different. But this is just to kind of give you an idea of what a graduate education looks like cost-wise. I think most of our students have loans that they take, which are available for education. One thing that's available to students is a lot of students will have what's called, when they graduate, go into what's called a loan repayment program, where they'll serve maybe 2 or 3 years at an underserved site, and in exchange for loan repayment. So they're still getting a salary and they're getting paid, but they may be in a rural area of medicine, or maybe they're in an underserved population in Houston. But that's one way to offload some of these costs. So we'll talk about the application process and what that looks like when you're thinking about applying to PA program. So all programs have prerequisite requirements. All of them are going to require you to have completed or be in the process of completing certain science and humanities classes. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. Many programs have a baseline requirement for GPA. It varies with schools. I would say probably on average, most schools are requiring about a 3.0 GPA. At Baylor, we do require a 3.2 GPA. And that's not to say, that, we have students with GPAs who have 3.2 when they enter, and some with 4.0. There's a range. And so you don't have to have higher than a 3.2 to be considered competitive whatsoever. Some programs do require standardized testing. So it's very important to know, be familiar with what the schools are requiring of you when you start to apply. So there's different standardized tests that you may see. So GREs are required. There's a test called the Casper, which is really it's sort of a emotional situational type test. And then the PA-CAT, which it's a newer test. It's designed similarly to the MCAT for medical school. Baylor, as of this year, we do not require any standardized testing. So students who apply to our program from this point moving forward do not have to have a standardized test to be admitted into the program. In fact, we don't require it at all. All programs will require that you have a bachelor's degree by the time you enter the program. So some require that you have graduated from school before you apply, and some will allow you to apply while you're still in school. And so at Baylor, you could still be, let's say you're in your junior year this year. You could technically, and you're going to graduate next May, let's say, you could apply for PA school now if you meet the prerequisites and get your application in on time. So we allow students to be in the process of completing courses while they're applying. So y'all may be familiar with these standardized application services. So for most PA programs, you apply through this system called CASPA, and you will submit your letters of recommendation, your transcripts, essays, whatever it is that's required for all schools will go through this one system. And then some schools will have, extra essays they may want you to write, and that's just dependent on the school. And then once your application is submitted for all programs, then, based on review, you may be invited for an interview. Some schools will have what's called rolling admissions, where they'll allow you to apply over the course of a year. At Baylor, we just have a one-time interview period, which occurs in the later fall. Let's see. So there's a question I'm going to ask real quick, or see. It says, do you think, this is from Morgan, do you think the standardized testing will be required in the future, or do you think that's not something that will change? I can tell you at Baylor, we will not introduce standardized testing anywhere in the near future. There is a possibility we may look at the Casper in a couple of years, but that's not going to be anytime soon. Probably not during, for all of you who are in school now, not likely at all. And we certainly will not go back to the GRE. So There are other programs who don't require standardized testing as well. So,
Can I just ask, like, out of curiosity, what made you guys decide to like just completely ditch the
Mhm.
GRE?
No, that's a great question. We found that the GRE, so we researched student performance and their scores on the GRE, and we found that the GRE was not predictive of student success. So someone could have scored really highly on the GRE, and it did not mean that they were going to perform better in PA school than someone who barely scored what they needed to on the GRE. So we did not want to eliminate someone's chance of being accepted into a program because of their GRE score that might have been close, but not quite there. So, yeah. Okay. So this is a look at some of the programs across Texas. We actually have one new program that's not included on this list, so we'll have to update that. But we've got UTMB in Galveston, San Antonio, Pan Am, North Texas, Texas Tech, Southwestern, and Dallas and Baylor. And these are all of the various prerequisites that are required of the programs. And so what you're going to see here, which is kind of, it can be an annoying situation, I think, as an undergraduate, is that this is not standardized across the board. And so it's very important for you, wherever it is that you may be applying to a graduate school, no matter what it is you want to do, to be familiar with the prerequisites that they require, because they may be different from school to school. Okay. You can see that, all schools are going to have you have to do anatomy and physiology. I mean, there's some that are the same across the board, but there's some that are different. Okay. So I just want to make you aware of that, because it's very likely that, if you were going to apply to a PA program, you're probably going to apply to more than one, maybe. And so you want to make sure you've got your prerequisites. So we don't just, kind of come up with these prerequisites and go with them. We know that the prerequisites that we require of you sort of build a foundation for you as you advance into PA school. So, for example, statistics. We require that students complete statistics. And part of the reason in that is because you'll have a health research methods course when you're in school and you'll write a paper. So it's important to build upon this foundation to have success in school. So these kind of are listing some of these prerequisites and why they're important. Okay. And that, we look at these every year and make a decision. Do we need to eliminate something on here? Do we need to change something based on how students perform, in their first year of school? Let's see. So another question. So how do you guys evaluate repeated courses? Do you take the average between all the attempts or the best grade out of the attempts? That's a great question. So when you apply, through the CASPA application, it's required that your transcripts for all of courses be sent in. Okay. And so if you repeated a course, the grade that you got in both of those courses will be averaged together. But what we do is we look for trends. So when we're evaluating an application, so someone's applied, we look at prerequisites, and we look through the transcript, and if we see that someone, maybe they got a C or maybe they got a D in a course their sophomore year, and they retook it in their senior year and got an A, then that looks favorably. Okay, so we know that sometimes students struggle getting started in college or finding their way, and so we do look for improvement in grades over time for that reason. So okay. So in Texas, we have 8 accredited programs, one that's in the accreditation process. Like I said earlier, there's 250 and growing programs, all master's degree, on average 30 months. And the mean GPA for students in PA programs is 3.5. But that does not mean that you have to have a 3.5 to get into a PA school. Like I said, there's a range, and depending on what the baseline, requirement is, like I said, in general, I think in Texas it's 3.0. there are going to be students who are across the board with their GPAs. Okay. Again, there are prerequisites for all programs. You have to have a bachelor's degree by the time you start. And then some schools require that you have experiences. So they may require that you have some healthcare experiences or some shadowing experiences or some patient care experiences. And that's something you have to report on your application. At Baylor, we do not require any healthcare experience. We encourage it because we think it helps you understand the practice of medicine and how people, integrate and how PAs function in practice. But it's not something that we require. And so we do have students who come in and don't have any experience. Maybe they've researched the profession in different ways, or maybe they had a PA who took care of them sometime during their life. Okay. I think schools are also recognizing that during this COVID period, it's very difficult to find shadowing experiences and healthcare exposure experience. So there's some modifications, I think, that are being allowed. So I think people have had opportunities to do like telemedicine, shadowing, and things like that. So when PAs graduate from school, we have to be licensed. So in order to be licensed by the state of Texas, you have to graduate from an accredited program. You have to pass a board exam. So all of our students take a national board when they graduate, and then they apply for state licensure so they can practice medicine. Once you finish school, though, you have to continue your education over time. So you don't necessarily go back to school per se, but you do have to have continuing education to keep you up to date with any changes in medicine. So you're kind of a student for life in some ways because medicine does change, and it's important as a provider to know what those changes are or to refamiliarize yourself with maybe how to manage diabetes because you hadn't done that in a few years because you're working in, you're taking care of people in their lungs, not their diabetes, right? So that's part of the process of maintaining your license. So in Texas, there are close to 8,000 PAs. Most students who graduate in Texas stay in Texas. A lot of them will go out of state. Baylor does, we do have actually a number of students who come in from out of state. And so a lot of them will go back home, but a lot of them end up staying here. Currently, the female to male ratio in the profession is 2-to-1, but I can tell you that this trend is, we're seeing a lot more men enter the field as opposed to 30 years ago for sure. So this gives you an idea. These are 2018 stats. So this has probably changed a little bit, but this is the latest data that we have. This gives you an idea of median salary in Texas and nationally. So this is not mean, this is not average. This is kind of where PA salary falls in the middle of the road, right? And that's very dependent on whether you work full-time, whether you work part-time. This is like taking into consideration what everybody does. In the time that they work. So it's pretty good. The salary is this is pretty accurate even for new graduates. Of course, are going to have a lesser salary, but not too much. Okay. So what are the perks and the benefits of becoming a PA? It's a very in-demand profession. It continues to grow, and that's why you're seeing more programs across the country. We have high job placement rates. I can tell you with certainty that all of our graduates have jobs, usually all of them within 3 months, if they all apply for jobs within 3 months, okay? This year has been, with the pandemic, a little bit different, and I think we may still have a few students who graduated in December who are still looking, but I think of maybe 3 or 4, and they're holding out for certain jobs. And that's why. Most graduates are going to have multiple job offers. And again, employment rates only continuing to go up. The income for PAs is good. It's stable. There are benefits. So most of the time when you're employed, your employer is not only going to offer you a salary, but they're also going to offer you like medical insurance, dental insurance. Or they may offer you a retirement plan. So they offer you this opportunity to save without you having to save yourself. As well, they cover your insurance. We have to have liability insurance and malpractice insurance when we graduate. So they typically cover these costs. Okay. So there's a lot of hidden monetary benefits that you get. Okay. And like I said, PAs are flexible. I know a lot of PAs who work 1 day a week, who work half of the week. So there's a lot of flexibility in that too. The other thing that we know is that PAs are satisfied or happy with the choice that they made to go into this profession. We query all of our graduates after graduation and along, over periods of time as well. And graduates feel like they've been prepared, like when they go out into practice, that they're prepared to enter the workforce. So patients, based on query, patients, the majority feel like they can trust us, that it makes it easier to get appointments for certain things, and that we do improve healthcare overall. At Baylor, our specific mission is to make sure that we are training people to become compassionate, knowledgeable healthcare providers who are up to date with contemporary medicine. Currently our program is ranked number 3 in the country, and we feel very fortunate to have that ranking. I can tell you with certainty that every program in Texas does an excellent job of training future PAs. We have great programs here and across the country for sure. So just some things about our program specifically. We have high pass rates for the first time of students taking the certification exam. All of our students pass the certifications exam. It's very rare that someone has to take it twice to pass. Like I said, we're situated in the middle of the largest medical center in the world. So our opportunities for training we have lots of them. And the people in the medical center are very familiar with PAs and understand how we fit into medicine. At Baylor, we have a very small class size. So we have 40 students per class. Currently, we have 9 core faculty. So we have a very, very small teacher to student ratio, and that allows us to get to know our students pretty well, actually, which I think is very helpful in supporting them. Students are, like I said earlier, feel satisfied with their training. We have tons of alumni who come back and want to help train or play some sort of role in the education of the students who are, currently training. So, and students, I know right now times are a little bit strange, but our students do have opportunities to get to know one another outside of the classroom, participate in service, fun things that we do as humans outside of going to school. So that just kind of gives you an idea of some things. These are some resources. Our national organization's website, the AAPA, and then the Texas Academy of PAs gives some good information as well if you want that resource. This is, as far as Baylor, our contact. Elizabeth Elliott, who is scheduled to talk to you. She is the chair of the admissions committee, and I'm the vice chair. My name's Alyssa Love. And we welcome any questions that you might have. We do have information sessions that we hold, every month. So they're all on Zoom. So if you ever feel like you want some more information, you can sign up for one of those on our website. So I guess that's it. Are there any questions that anybody has or any clarifications? I really appreciate you all being here. It's a privilege to get to talk to to you all interested in, you know, medicine in some sort of way. There's so many opportunities that are there for you, and sometimes not well known, you know. So it's good that you have these organizations to introduce these professions to you. So anybody with any questions?
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
So you guys you don't do the GRE or the Casper or any of those, or you don't require shadowing experience, you don't require healthcare experience either. Is there anything else that would make me a better applicant that you guys look for mainly?
So I mean, of course, so prerequisites are one thing that have to be met, right? Grades
Right.
and that sort of thing. We look, I mean, we really take a close look at the application in general. So we look at other things that you may have done. So we pay attention to, for example, maybe you're a student who has had to finance their way through college and you've worked all the way through college, right? And so that shows that you can manage time. Maybe you were involved in different extracurricular activities, or there's something that you're really passionate about, volunteer wise, that you spend a lot of time doing. We look for, I mean, we have a number of students who are actually second career applicants. Maybe they did something else before they decided to do PA school. But for you all that are, you know, if you're in undergraduate, you know, there are different things that we look at in terms of involvement. We look at your essay. So you do have to produce an essay, and it's pretty standard. There's a standardized one for every program.
Okay.
And we have a couple of individual ones that we ask at Baylor as well. So we really pay attention to sort of understanding why you want to do this, you know, kind of how this came about for you. It's not necessarily about being creative with how you write the information. It's really more an opportunity for us to get to know you.
Okay.
We look for certain characteristics in those applications, like humility, determination, you know, communication, that sort of thing. So while we don't have students while we don't require shadowing and healthcare experiences, we do look at that. I mean, if students have had those opportunities, I mean, that's certainly something we're going to pay attention to as well. It doesn't necessarily give someone higher marks than another. But, you know, someone has a bunch of hours. I mean, it shows commitment, you know. There's just different things we look at. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Let's see. Okay. So Morgan says over here, let me pull my chat over. Also asking about the general admission process. If we have a slightly lower GPA, like we're right at 3.0, would volunteering kind of help counteract and boost our application even with the lower GPA? It's a great question. So at Baylor, our GPA requirements are not flexible. I mean, we have to set a standard somewhere, and that's where we set them. I cannot say that all programs have that same requirement. You know, I don't know about the other schools for sure in Texas, but I would say that that's not out of the question necessarily, depending on the programs. And I think that is a great question to actually ask programs. I mean, you should be able to email and ask that question as well. So, and they should be very truthful with what they will allow and not allow. So, very good question. And at any time, if you have questions, you know, if you think of something and you're not sure about, Elizabeth and I answer personally almost all of the questions that come through. And so we're happy to do that as well. So you have a lot to think about. What's that? Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind.
Sure, no.
It said on the site, you guys, if there's any recommended courses you would say to take, it'd be medical terminology. Is there any others you can think of maybe? Not really, or?
No. I can think of some that, I mean, they're certainly not required, but they might help you. in
Okay.
school, if you, because I know you have elective options, or you can, you know, you have some flexibility with choice.
Mhm.
I definitely would say, not that you're dying to do this, but biochemistry is
Okay.
probably a good one to have,
All
because
right.
because you do have biochemistry. Well, at Baylor, you have biochemistry.
Right.
If you have the option for immunology,
Mhm.
that's a good one to take. If we're
Okay.
talking about science courses just to prepare you,
Yes, ma'am.
I would say if you have like a histology class, like a cellular, well, we've got microbiology, but if you have histology, that's a good one. Let me think of what else,
Okay.
because we require a lot of the ones I'm thinking about. I mean, medical terminology is nice because it sort of introduces you to a lot of the language that we
Mhm.
use. And so it kind of makes it a little bit easier to adapt to that once you get into school. So,
Okay.
um, you know, I mean, in outside of science classes, I mean, any class that you have where you have to write is you know, a composition. I mean, we require a composition class, but writing is a good
Mhm.
skill because you're going to do a lot of it.
Okay.
So that's not a bad thing to do. Well, we do require statistics. I don't know that all schools do, and so um, you know, it varies across the board. I would definitely say statistics is probably a good one, if
Okay.
it's not required for a school. So so let me see here, another question. Does that answer your question, Aaron?
Yes, ma'am. Definitely. I wrote those down so I can go and look
Yeah, if
into
you
it.
think of, I'm trying to just think off the top of my head. I think Morgan says, would health courses such as drug use and abuse and human disease also be considered beneficial? Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you know, any kind of courses like that, any kind of like psychology courses. Gosh, I'm trying to even think. Um, what else? I mean, most schools will require you to have like genetics. Not all of them will, but that's a good one if
Okay.
you're thinking about that. Certainly microbiology, because I know not all of them require that,
Mhm.
um, is a good one to have too, for sure. So, um,
All right.
you know, and if you if you're planning to practice in medicine or practice in Texas, you know, your Spanish skills,
Right.
you know, taking Spanish classes can be very helpful, you know, just for practicality in patient care, because a lot of our students, or no, all of our students, spend time at some of our facilities where there's a large number of Spanish speaking patients.
Okay.
And so, you know, that can be helpful as well, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. All
You're
right.
welcome. Anything else?
I have one more question, one last one to top it
Sure.
off.
Okay.
You guys don't offer any on-campus visits right now, no on-campus information sessions or anything until further notice with COVID?
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, we barely get onto campus as faculty. No, I mean,
Okay.
there's no visitors on campus right now. That
Mhm.
may change. I think that is starting to, that will probably change starting this summer.
Okay.
Um, and so the opportunity to have information sessions on campus, I expect that we'll be able to restart those soon.
Okay.
So hopefully. Um, yeah, that's kind of how it's looking. Most of our, I mean, our students now pretty much are, you know, the learning is hybrid, and so probably for like y'all, they have most of their courses are Zoom.
Hmm.
They do have some on campus, so they're still coming in for labs and things like that. The clinical students are all on services, so that was only disrupted for maybe a month. So, but we think that's going to change next year. We think we'll have our students back on campus much more. So,
Okay.
um, let's see. Someone asked Alondra, if we haven't taken a Spanish course but we are bilingual, do we mention that in essay? Absolutely, of course. You know, that's a great skill. I mean, whether it's something you learned because your family spoke Spanish or something that you learned independently, I think that, and especially if that's important to you, in terms of maybe you plan to practice in a bilingual or a primarily Spanish speaking population. That's something to talk about. Yeah, I think your essay is a really good opportunity for you to try and talk about who you are as much as you can. I think a lot of times people recommend to you all to try to get creative and pose things in different ways in your essays, and that can be interesting. But we're really looking to try and get to know you and your experience with how you got here and why you want to do this. That's kind of what we're looking at. So I know it's a lot to think about where you are right now, but things will work out, and it's good to explore and look at all of your options. So yeah. Anything else? Well, thank you so much.
I have a question. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No. Any questions? I'm good.
Is there a way that we can reach out to students and get perspectives from the students? Like any specific chats that you have for your college?
That's a really great question. And that's something we're exploring, actually. There's not a forum currently that's available where you can connect with current students to talk about their experience per se. I mean, we do on our website have like videos of students talking about their experience. I know that's a little bit artificial, but it does, happen. But what you're talking about is something we are looking at doing. So not yet, but hopefully soon. So that's
okay,
a really
yes, ma'am. Thank
great
you.
question. We do, I will say that in our interview process, when students are invited for interview or student applicants are invited for interviews, our students are extremely enrolled in that process or engaged. And so we have a lot of student panels set up where applicants can ask questions, and there's a lot of one-on-one time with students. So you get to visit with them in a sort of a student mode and then in a personal mode, where you might get more of the down and dirty information, I guess, about being a student that they want to share. So yeah. That's what it looks like right now. Now, I can't say other schools may provide that opportunity, and I'm just not aware of it. And you would have to reach out to those programs to find out. I would venture to say, most programs aren't allowing anyone on campuses right now, but they may have some of these chats or open forums and things. So, such a great idea. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. Well, I thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank
you for taking your time out of your day to do this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, absolutely. Thanks for showing up. It's dinner time. It's a Thursday night, and I think people probably had lots of other things they might be doing on Thursdays if we weren't all cooped up. So thank you for taking the time, and good luck to everybody with what all you're planning to do in your future. So, all right. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Thanks. Have a
You're
great
welcome.
night, everyone.
All right. Take care, everybody.